Hello and welcome to all. From the almost infernal pace of filming imposed on the actors and the technical staff, to the weight and muscle gain in record time, without forgetting, of course, the strict prohibition to drink alcohol on the sets, as in the good old days of Prohibition in the 1930s. Here are the extreme and very rigorous rules that the cast of Squid Game had to follow. Let's start. Some television producers impose drastic conditions to its actors, and Squid Game, the star series of Netflix, is certainly part of it. Because to reach such a success, the cast of actors as well as the filming teams had to comply with extremely rigorous rules, which must, of course, be respected to the letter. Ho Sung-tae, who plays the vicious and extremely violent gangster, Duk-soo, had to follow an ultra-draconian diet before the shooting in order to gain weight and thus fit the description of the character he plays. The actor had to gain more than 15 kilograms in less than a month so that he fits perfectly to the physique of a big and strong criminal. But it must be said that it was not a very easy task, especially since the actor had lost a lot of weight during the confinement due to the pandemic of COVID-19. So to get this role, Ho Sung-tae had to eat a lot of food and snacks every day, ingesting huge amounts of food. But because of this gargantuan diet, the actor also suffered from several ailments that greatly deteriorated his health. Ho Sung-tae suffered so much during this weight gain, similar to the feeding of a goose, that the muscles of his calves literally tore and his knees caused him excruciating pain. Nevertheless, the South Korean actor delivered a great performance in Squid Game, so much so that his character was acclaimed by internet users around the world. The actor was praised for his great artistic performance in making his gangster character hate and make him so despicable in the eyes of the fans of the series. Indeed, it is commonly accepted in the world of the seventh art that the roles of villains are very often the most difficult to interpret, because paradoxically, it takes a good dose of empathy to put yourself in the shoes of a cold-blooded killer or a sociopath. One of the most emblematic and important characters of the Squid Game series is undoubtedly the participant number 67, alias Kang Sae-byuk, the young and beautiful North Korean refugee who participates in the game in order to save her family back home. With such a background, there is no doubt that this role is one of the most difficult to interpret, especially with all the potential tension between the two Koreas. But that's not all, because to play this character, Jung Ho-yeon, the young and pretty 27-year-old actress who interprets it, had to adopt a North Korean accent while alternating between the latter and the South Korean accent between scenes. Thus, when her character Kang Sae-byuk is in the company of other players, she hides her North Korean accent in order not to betray her origins. This accent will only really come out when the beautiful young woman is talking with her younger brother. If Sae-byuk puts so much energy to hide her North Korean accent around the South Korean players, it is only to avoid discrimination and negative comments about her nationality and her political allegiance. And we can say that she was not mistaken, since her character will be qualified as a spy and a communist when some players will notice that she is North Korean. The sublime actress has thus demonstrated an impressive talent by literally juggling two accents without losing the thread or getting tangled up. But it must also be said that to achieve such excellence, the beautiful Jung Ho-yeon had to spend hours with her North Korean teacher, who taught her the subtleties of the North Korean accent. The beautiful supermodel also had to watch hundreds of documentaries and reports on North Korean political refugees in order to understand their lives. No doubt that to be part of the cast of such a thrilling series, the actors had to submit to physical requirements that could seem prohibitive for many of us. Indeed, very few people would be able to endure the intense physical efforts that the Netflix production had to inflict on its actors. But of all the terrible tests of the Squid Game, the one that was the most painful for the actors was undoubtedly the game of tug-of-war. During this famous scene, the players seemed to show titanic efforts in order to win, as shown by the grimaces and the tensing of their faces. But it must be said that the pain that was visible on their faces was not only due to their incredible acting skills. What you may not know is that the actors were not playing with each other, but had to fight against a powerful machine installed at the other end of the rope. They could pull as hard as they could. They were sure never to win because the heavy robot in front of them was literally invincible. In fact, the scene was so difficult to film and the physical efforts so intense that some actors, including the charismatic Ho Sung-tae, started vomiting during the shooting. Indeed, the reactions of the human body to such hard physical activities result in excruciating muscular pains, as well as uncontrolled nausea and vomiting. The poor actors suffered a lot before they could finally finish this scene, which they all experienced without exception as a real ordeal. For a hyper-gigantic production such as Squid Game, Netflix had to make sure that the actors and the production team would keep absolute secrecy during the shooting, for it was important not to reveal images or teasers before the American streaming platform could ensure the promotion of the series as it sees fit. And when it comes to a suspenseful show like Squid Game, an inadvertent spoiler could literally spoil all the fun and intensity of the plot. Not only that, but the whole project of launching the show could have been ruined because the very interest of the show would have been compromised. The whole cast of Squid Game had to respect the absolute secrecy of the shooting and not reveal anything about the plot to anyone, even to their closest relatives. And we can say that it was certainly not an open secret because Netflix has watched over the grain and has allowed to broadcast only the information that it wanted to let leak, and that, according to it, did not affect the promotional campaign of its program. We can easily imagine the stars of the series refusing to make any comment in front of journalists, but it is rather difficult to believe that they kept the secret even in front of their close family. In any case, even if they were able to divulge something to them, they were silent as the grave because we finally heard about Squid Game only when Netflix posted on its recent playlist. To finish in time a project of the scale of Squid Game, it is not necessary to beat around the bush, because it is by imposing an almost infernal pace during the shooting that Netflix could release its superstar show in such a short time. And it must be said that no one on the cast of Squid Game has been spared by this battle. From the iconic stars of South Korean television to the sound or editing technicians, and even the poor cleaning staff. In order to keep up this frantic pace, the actors had to take only very short breaks between the different shots, which could go on for hours. Some scenes could indeed often take much longer than expected, not to mention all the long makeup sessions and preparation of the dressing and life-size sets, which could last for hours. It will have been necessary to make a total abnegation of oneself and of one's free time on behalf of practically all the speakers in the Star series of Netflix in order to finish the show within the time limits given by the production. But of course, we can't really talk about wasted time, can we? Especially when you see how successful Squid Game has been all over the planet, becoming the most watched TV series in the world on Netflix. If you've watched Squid Game, you'll probably agree that the doll scene freaked you out, right? Well, you're not the only one, because that damn doll is no match for Annabelle in terms of horror, and many fans of the show have had some pretty bad nightmares about it. But it must be said that for the actors of the South Korean K-drama too, the ordeal of red light, green light revisited in the Squid Game sauce was not a pleasure. The cast of actors had to go back to childhood and its emblematic games that were once played in the schoolyard. Games of marbles, Asian hopscotch, or the famous tug of war. The poor actors of the Netflix series had to revisit their entire repertoire of yesteryear in order to deliver a great performance behind the camera. And if you think it was a child's game, you are very wrong. In the scene of red light, green light, for example, the actors had to learn how to stop quickly and stay frozen for long minutes. And of course, as none of them had the mentioned living statue on their CV, the shooting of this part was more than trying. Did you know that the management of Netflix has strictly forbidden the actors of Squid Game to give personal interviews during the shooting of the series? This censorship might seem absolutely revolting for most of us, but you should know that for the stars of the South Korean show, this measure was rather beneficial in the end, because this interview ban only concerned the small local channels of South Korea and did not include the big behemoths of the international press. The actors could indeed give all the interviews they wanted, but only on the big media channels, such as CNN or Fox News. This exclusivity will have served them well, since the unexpected and phenomenal success of the series has propelled its actors to the most unattainable heights of fame. It was therefore in their best interest to reserve their appearances and media outings for world-class media outlets, which would only further increase their fame. This is the main reason why the director of the series, as well as the management of the American streaming platform, forbid any interview with small channels that do not have much media interest. And as always, we have saved the best for last, with this extremely strict rule that had to be respected at all costs on the sets of the series Squid Game. And you will see for some actors of the cast, this rule was rather difficult to follow or swallow. In fact, during the whole shooting of Squid Game, it was strictly forbidden to consume alcohol. This zero tolerance towards drink was established for the obvious reason of avoiding any lack of concentration or lucidity. Because in order to film such scenes and dialogue of such dramatic and artistic intensity, the actors had to be extremely lucid and attentive. Moreover, in the scenes in which we can see the characters drinking alcohol, it is in fact other concoctions that they ingest, which do look like red wine, but which strictly have no alcohol in them. So even to celebrate the huge success of their show, the Squid Game actors couldn't get as drunk as they wanted to, or at least not until the last shot of the final episode. It is said that one drink is fine. 2 drinks? Hello, damage. But for Netflix, it is rather the pure and hard abstinence of alcohol in the purest style of the Prohibition of the 1930s in Chicago. And that's it for today. What do you think of the Squid Game series and the extreme rules the actors had to follow? Which of them did you find the most painful or the hardest to follow? Tell us in the comments, and if you like this video, don't forget to put a like and subscribe and activate the notifications. See you soon for new discoveries out of the ordinary.